Hello, Mardad.
Hi, Asha.
This is our third episode on the topic of intersex in Islam. Mardad, I would like to continue from where we left off, if that is okay. When you introduced the emergence of binary and non-binary debates within the Islamic tradition, you spoke about the classical Shi'i jurist Ibn Idris al-Hili and his argument against recognizing intersex individuals as a third sex. So my question now is, how did later Shi'i and Sunni jurists engage with this discussion? What kind of reception did this approach receive?
A good question. I should mention before that a similar argument was actually put forward by Al-Sarahsi, the 11th century Hanafi jurist. But interestingly, it did not spark a broad or sustained discussion among Sunni jurists. For the most part, they seem to accept the binary view of sex at face value. But that said, there are some exceptions, particularly among later Maliki jurists who did raise the possibility of non-binary intersex identities. However, even then, they often ended up rejecting it and tried to reaffirm the binary framework. And for those who are interested in diving deeper into this topic, I've written about it more fully in my recent article entitled Navigating Body Politics in the Journal of Islamic Law and Society.
Yes, and we will put the link under this episode.
Yes, great. And it's an open access publication.
Thank you.
But let's go back to the Shi'i context. So in that context, the response was quite different and actually more dynamic and evolving over time. That being said, jurists who lived shortly after Ibn Idris, such as Al-Muhaqqiq al-Hilli, Al-Allama al-Hilli, and Fakhr al-Muhaqqiqin al-Hilli, they seemed overlooked his binary argument. The first scholar to challenge Ibn Idris' theological argument was a jurist called Shamsuddin Muhammad Makki al-Amili, better known as Al-Shahid al-Awwal. He's a jurist of the 14th century, and he critiqued Ibn Idris' argument. So he writes, and I'm quoting, Ibn Idris holds that hunthath are either male or female, which implies that they cannot be categorized as a third nature, and in his word in Arabic would be a tabi'a thalitha, third nature, literally. So his argument is based on the words of God, meaning that Shahid al-Abbal is explaining that Ibn Idris al-Hilli's argument for the binary notion of a human being is based on the words of God, such as the Quran, chapter 42, verse 49, which we just covered in our last episode. I'm not going to repeat that one if you allow me. However, such an understanding of the Quran, according to Shahid al-Awwal, is inaccurate. Why? Because he believes that there are no signs in these verses to exclude a third category of human being. Furthermore, according to Shahid al-Awwal and his understanding, it appears that God in these verses is only addressing the dominant categories of humans, namely male and female, but not all humans inclusively.
So what exactly is Shahid al-Awwal's argument against Ibn Idris al-Hilli's view? Is he rejecting the idea that the specific verse implies an exclusive male-female binary, or the Quran in general never insists on such exclusivity?
Yes, I mean, Al-Shahid al-Awwal in fact challenges Ibn Idris' second point. What was that point? The point was that the Quranic verses refer, according to Ibn Idris, refer comprehensively to categories of human, right? But instead, Ash-Shahid al-Awwal suggests that all such verses address only the majority of humankind, or the members of those sexes who make up the vast majority of the human population, namely males and females, right? But not the entirety of humanity. In fact, as Shahid al-Awwal notes, there is no evidence in these verses or elsewhere, in fact, in the Quran, that God did not create other categories of humans. So therefore, the existence of a third category or third nature, as he puts it, a tabi'a thalitha, is plausible or even more possible. So, therefore, Shahid al-Awwal argues that no theological doctrine contradicts the idea that legal rulings on khuntha mushkil can differ from those on males and females. I hope it makes sense now.
Yes, it does. Thank you. So I guess I'm wondering what happened next. I mean, after Al-Shahid al-Awwal challenged the binary conception of male and female, how did the discussion evolve from there?
Yes, ever since Al-Shahid al-Ahwal put forward his argument on the plausibility or possibility of a third category of humankind, there have been two opposing camps in Shi'i legal discourse. One group of jurists, including Ibn Fahd al-Hilli, following Ibn Idris al-Hilli, rejects the notion of a third category and defends Ibn Idris' position and his theological argument, as I mentioned. But then there is a second group explores the plausibility and further possibility of a third category of humanity. And this later group includes a range of scholars across different centuries, such as Al-Suyuri al-Hilli, known as Al-Fadil al-Miqdad, a jurist of the 15th century, or Zainuddin al-Jubari al-Amili, a jurist of the 16th century, or Mullah Ahmad al-Narabi, a jurist of the 18th century, or Mir Fattah al-Marabi, a jurist of the 19th century, or Muhammad Ibrahim al-Yazdi and Sayyid Kazim al-Tabatabai al-Yazdi, both from the early 20th centuries. So we have several jurists who defend and promote or advocate for the non-binary position.
So now I'm wondering, now we have the different positions of the jurists. So because my main question is, where exactly is the Kunta's agency in all of these legal discussions? Has the idea of them having the right to decide about their own body ever been seriously considered? And if so, has it been accepted or largely rejected by jurists?
This is such an important topic, and honestly, it hasn't received the attention it really deserves. We probably won't be able to dive into all the complexities right now, but I try to give a brief overview, and hopefully we can return to it in more detail in a future session. So when we're dealing with intersex individuals whose sex is relatively straightforward to determine, what jurists usually refer to as uncomplicated or determinate cases, these jurists, or jurists generally speaking, tend to rely on primary signs like the way a person urinates, as well as secondary features such as beard growth, the presence of breast, or menstruation.
Yes, I remember you touched on these remarks in our last episode.
Yes, exactly. So in such cases, jurists generally don't permit the person to choose or declare their own sex. So the legal determination is often based on those physical signs. But things become more complicated with khuntha mushkil, that is, individuals whose sex remains ambiguous even after looking at all those indicators, right? And we discussed this issue previously. So in these more complex cases, several Sunni and Shi'i jurists allow the person themselves to declare their sex or gender identity, though this is often on the condition that the declaration cannot later be changed, right? So this self-identification tends to be accepted in personal or spiritual matters like marriage, leading a congregational prayers, or ritual acts. However, when it comes to legal matters that affect others, like inheritance or blood money, jurists are more cautious. There is concern that someone might claim a male identity, for example, to receive a larger share, right? So which could, unfairly impact others' rights. Right. So, and let me add also this interesting point that some Hanafi, Shafi'i, and also Shi'i scholars argue that if there are no clear physical signs, a khuntha mushkil who's reached puberty and is mentally sound can also determine their sex based on sexual inclination. So, on the assumption that attraction typically follows pattern of desiring the opposite sex, of course, right? Once that declaration is made, it's considered final, however. So unless a clear biological sign later contradicts it, like pregnancy, for example. So jurists who support this approach generally highlight two things. One, or A, the deeply personal nature of sexual desire, and B, the importance of maintaining consistency in legal status.
Wow, thank you very much. These short discussions have been very educational, constructive, as well as informative. I must say, Mardad, I have learned a lot during our conversations, and I hope those listening to also feel the same way. The subject of intersex individuals is one that should be taken seriously, and Muslim individuals and Muslim society as a whole, both in the West and elsewhere, should especially feel proud and motivated by their tradition, both the legal and scholarly work on this subject that dates back 700 years ago. I must say, I personally, as a Muslim, feel very proud and motivated to learn more on the subject of intersex.
Yes, certainly. As you have mentioned, and we have shown in our conversation so far, this is a very rich and empathetic tradition, unlike what these modern imams and preachers want to present Islam as. And thank you for engaging with me, and I hope we can at another time continue these talks and conversations.
Thank you very much. I certainly hope we can. And for those interested in learning more on the topic, please make sure to check out Dr. Mardad's work on this subject on the website Beyond Binaries, and the link of these articles as well as his other work will be on the website. Just to emphasize, they are all open access.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.